the electronics has changed my conception of sound.
Mm-hmm.
Like before, as a bass player, we think about tone and we know like, oh, well, that's the attack part of the sound, and that's, we like certain things about it, whether it's boomy or high end or whatever. And working with the electronics and synthesis has really sort of changed the vocabulary. So I'll listen to stuff and I'll know like, oh, that's kind of more square wave like or more sine wave like.
Welcome to another episode of Contrabass Conversations, your show covering life on the low end of the spectrum. I'm your host, Jason Heath, and we are chatting today with Gahlord Dewald, who I've been connected with for years, and he's somebody that's been recommended as a guest for years. And it's because of events like the International Society of Bassists Convention, ISB 2017, that we finally got connected. I was wrapping up an interview with, I believe it was David Gage, and Gahlord walks by and I realize, let's talk. We've been talking about doing an interview for years now at this point. He's active using modular synthesizers and all sorts of cool things with bass and electronics. And that's the serendipity of an event like the ISB convention. We chatted, we dig into what he uses for his performances, how you might want to get into pedals and synthesizers and modular synthesis in general, and some good pedals to start with. It was a great conversation, and I had a great time catching up with Gahlord. This is the last live interview I did at ISB 2017, but you'll be hearing from many people that I connected with and followed up with for interviews from this event. So the coverage of the event, in a way, will continue. And you can check out everything that's been put out relating to ISB, this convention and past conventions at contrabassconversations.com/ISB. And before we get rolling, I'd like to give a shout out to one of the sponsors of ISB 2017 and a longtime sponsor of Contrabass Conversations. It's D'Addario Strings. I'm playing their Kaplan strings. I love them. They sound great. I'm working on a Adam Ben Ezra pizzicato tune right now, and they're great for pizzicato. I'm working through some etudes for some students I'm teaching, and they sound great under the bow. They're wonderful. It's a nice, warm response, and they're used by artists like Klaus Freudenstein, Andres Martin, Mike Valerio, and so many others. Enter to win a chance at getting a set of D'Addario strings at contrabassconversations.com/strings. And thank you also to the Bass Violin Shop. And the Bass Violin Shop offers the Southeast's largest selection of basses. You can get a laminate, hybrid, and carved double basses. So whether you're looking for an entry-level bass, one of those laminate basses that most students start out on, or a fine top-of-the-line pedigree instrument, there's always a unique selection ready for you to try. Check out what they've got at bassviolinshop.com, and trade-ins and consignments are both welcome. All right, here we go with our conversation featuring Gahlord Dewald. We've been connected on Twitter, I think, for a long time. It's been fun following with your projects, and several people have recommended that I chat with you for the podcast. So it's kind of fun.
That's good to know.
Serendipity. So what? And before Gahlord and I started the recording, we were just talking about electronics and about modular electronics and what he uses in his performances. Can you maybe just can we just start there? Can you describe the type of gear you use when you perform?
Yeah. So left to my own devices, I've got a Eurorack modular system, and it's one of these things that has lots of lights and knobs and pretty colored wires, and you run some sound into it, or it generates its own sound, and then you alter it. So it's like it's hardware electronics. Yeah. So I'll take my double bass and I'll hook up a DPA mic or a little clip-on piezo mic and run that into the electronics, and then work from there.
Okay.
So a lot of the things I've been doing lately has been, I'll start with a phrase, oftentimes a phrase that I know, something that I've been practicing forever, some little etude that I would never in a million years get up and play this etude as a recital, but just some little snippet of melody, and then capture that into the electronics, and then adjust it from there. So you start with the organic bass sound, and then you start altering it through the electronics, and then maybe play on top of it in kind of an improvisational way, or however you really feel like.
So are you then sometimes looping as well?
Yeah. So there's
you get a sound.
sometimes, yeah. So some of the systems I don't usually plug in an actual loop pedal, but that would be a great way to do it. Each of the little bits of electronics in a modular rig, it's kind of like you get a box and you fill it up with a bunch of other little things that have holes and knobs and wires on them, and each of the little modules that goes in the system can do a different thing. And so in my case, I've got a few that do like grab a sample, but it's pretty rare that they're as straightforward as like a looper. You can get them like that, but most of them will be like, oh, it's a looper, but it'll also do granular synthesis and reorganize everything, so if you can play a scale and then reorganize it on the fly.
Yeah.
And so you can do some interesting compositional stuff with that if you want to plan it ahead, or you can improvise with it if you want to just make a racket, which is what I do most of the time.
Typically improvise, I love that, because that's like kind of like the modular culture, right? It's not going to just do like one thing.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, none of it does. It always they all have bad, they have bad information on how to use them. The manuals are useless.
Right.
The YouTube stuff is crazy. You really just have to sit down and say, okay, well, what happens when I turn this knob?
Yeah.
What happens when I turn that knob? And you play with it. It's an exploratory kind of way of dealing with technology. There's a great book that I've been reading called Experimental Music Since 1970 by Jenny Gottschalk. Mm-hmm. And she kind of breaks down different ways of thinking about experimental music. And one of the kind of trends, or kind of what she calls arcs, has to do with research. Like you research the music that you're making and how you do that. And incorporating electronics in this way is very much a research thing. Like I spend time playing the bass, listening to the sounds that go into the system and turning the knobs and saying, well, which sounds do I like and which sounds do I not like? In the same way that we would, when we're practicing normal stuff, and say, well, do I like it if I have is where the bow, its proximity to the bridge, do I like that tone or not in this moment or not? Yeah. It's the same. It's like the ultimate filter. You know?
I love that idea of like looking at it as the way that we think about sound. We're actually playing the bass, because that's part of what fascinates me about electronics is that just that experimental aspect of it. Let's just say someone's listening and they've seen like blooping lights and something like that, and they think that's cool, but they have no idea how to get started.
Right.
Like, how do you start to understand this world of modular synthesizers?
The first thing I would say to someone who's really just totally starting out, I'd say don't start with modular synthesizers. Okay. That would be step number one, because it could get expensive and hairy in a hurry.
Okay.
But what I would say is get a pedal.
Get a pedal.
Get a pedal. And the classic pedal, get the cheapest delay pedal you possibly can find.
Okay.
Because you play one note and then it plays a note back at a specified time. And that, just playing with that kind of gets you... First of all, it'll help you deal with the technology side, because you're going to say, well, I've got this pickup and I have to plug it into the thing. You have to solve that problem. Yeah. And it's different for everything. But so using just a delay pedal, that's a great way to solve that. Like learn all the, which kinds of cables do I need to hook up and that kind of thing. And then getting used to, this is a machine that does the same thing every time. It does what it's going to do, and you get used to playing with it and experimenting and improvising with it as if it were a partner, like if you're doing a duo for you and this delay pedal, and that would be the place I would tell people to start. Okay. Is like some kind of cool pedal, and then expand from that to other pedals, and then if that is exciting, and if it's still exciting, you're not $2,000 in the hole on a couple of pedals, So if that's still exciting, then you start looking at getting into modular.
That's like the next level of geekery.
It's super geeky. It's super geeky. Well, and partially because it's just not very well standardized, right? Like guitar pedals, we plug them in, we know they take a battery, we know we have an in and an out hole and some knobs. But with the modular stuff, you have to concern yourself with the power supply. The power supply isn't a given. So the first thing you have to do is say, what kind of power supply am I going to get? Okay. And so you're into these, you're doing calculations. I have a spreadsheet of all of my things. It's how much power did they all use? Okay. Can I fit them in this? So it can
start with the pedal.
Yeah, start with the pedal.
Plug a quarter-inch in.
And the good news is we're living in a golden age of pedals.
Yeah.
There's so much cool stuff. After you do your first just like experiments with the delay pedal. There's some really truly insane pedals out there operating on Arduino and other things. So
it's amazing to me, like what's out. Like I'm teaching these electronic music class. I had like these guys that were really into guitar and would bring in these like cool pedals that they did.
Yeah.
You know, just like made by these like indie bands, right? And it's like just called like the Sunshine pedal.
Yeah.
And there's one button on it that said Sunshine.
Right.
And you press it, it's just like whoa.
Yeah.
So.
There's a machine called the Rainbow Machine. That's the same kind of deal. You press it, it's just like whoa. There's a manufacturer after my brain just stopped. Earthquaker Effects that does a bunch of crazy stuff, and then a bunch of other little boutique guys that do just really. And I've got a pedal that's like halfway between a looper and a sequencer.
Okay.
So like you play something into it and it'll capture pieces of your sound, but you can then create a sequence out of it with the pedal, you know. And again, it's a matter of spending the time exploring what kind of sounds can the pedal make. In the same way that we explore what kind of sounds happen when I move the bow up, closer or further away from the bridge. It's the same. It's the same kind of process that you end up having to put in the same kind of time making bad results to get a good result. You know?
How'd you get into all this?
It started. I played some electric bass too, so it started. I think it really started because I wanted to make the bass sound that I liked in Parliament's Flashlight.
Oh, that's a good song to make.
Which is a great song, right? And I was like,
song.
oh, this would be so cool. And then I realized, oh, it's not Bootsy, it's Bernie Worrell's. Like it's a Moog on that thing. So I'm like, well, how do I do this? But I want to play the bass and not the keyboard because I'm stubborn. I don't know, So that's kind of what started it. It was like it started with like, oh, I'm going to do a mix of pedals to try to get that tone. And then I was like, oh, well, why don't I just get a Taurus and try to do that? And like running stuff through there. And then, 2 or 3 years later, I'm like off in ambient crazy land of like, what's the weird textures? But like one of the things along the way that has been fascinating for me has been how working with the electronics has changed my conception of sound. Like before, as a bass player, we think about tone and we know like, oh, well, that's the attack part of the sound, and that's we like certain things about ourselves, whether it's boomy or high end or whatever. And working with the electronics and synthesis has really sort of changed the vocabulary. So I'll listen to stuff and I'll know like, oh, that's kind of more square wave like or more sine wave like, and since I've been experimenting with the electronics, I know like, oh, if I adjust the filter just so, it's going to result in a sound that I like. And those ideas translate for me very much so into my regular acoustic playing. Kind of like I mentioned, where we place the bow on the string is our filter knob, and how does that work? And when I'm playing the bass and I'm getting a sound that's boomier than I would like, how do I change the collection of partials in this? It's kind of scientific.
No, I totally 100% agree, because when I started getting into electronics, that started to change the way I started to think about my analog playing and even conducting. I started to think like, oh no, I want more, and I started to feel almost like I was at the controls, like turning it. And yeah, it's interesting because it one influences the other. Totally.
Yeah, and some of it's just the nature of having a vocabulary for it. Like I knew about square waves and all this other stuff a little bit before, but I didn't have like a real vocabulary for it. And having that language now, when I hear a sound, I'm like, oh yeah, that's kind of where that's going with that. And if I wanted to recreate that sound, I would have a good chance, of being able to mess with it. And again, that just comes from taking the time on the research end of it. Same as we all did when we were first starting playing the bass and spent a lot of time making really awful sounds with the bow. It's the same kind of deal. But for me, that's been the biggest. That's been the biggest sort of change or addition is that I didn't expect. That messing with the electronics was going to have an influence on the way I played the acoustic side too.
But it just expands your conception of sound. We're so limited in our vocabulary as string players, or probably across the board for especially electric bass and electric guitar. Of course, obviously they're thinking more about the tonal palette because they're playing with that sort of thing from the beginning. But it's cool to like go back to the bow and realize like, wow, it's like a whole it's like a whole beautiful analog universe of colors they can pull out of this thing. I was watching this recital last night, Sam Suggs, who is trying to create some of the vocabulary, or the timbral vocabulary, I guess, of the electric bass on the acoustic. And it's just so cool that you're discovering that same thing with the electronics.
And I think a lot of music, does that. And I think about the younger players that are coming up, like guys that are like, your age and my age, like we probably played some electric bass starting out, but it wasn't the common thing. It wasn't, everybody wasn't doing it. At this point, like, everybody's grown up with these electronics. Like the idea electronics are some mystery or whatever. Everyone in the conservatories had access to this messed around with live at this point. So like there's just a ton of opportunity there for mixing and finding new sounds. I think I'm very involved in contemporary music with composed note stuff as well as improvisatory stuff, and it's really exciting to see how composers coming up and emerging composers interacting with electronics, and then using, for me on the double bass, using that as sort of a way to let's get some more material for the double bass as well from some of these people. So I think there's just the comfort level of electronics is just a lot higher than it certainly was when I was learning how to do this stuff. So,
and if people haven't played around, I mean, it totally reinvigorated me musically, and I got so inspired. Pardon me, digging in and like I find that the same creative part of my brain is activated when I'm like using live or like playing around with my machine, like the native instrument, like I'm using knobs and stuff. And I totally feel that same part of my brain that's activated when I'm playing bass. They're very, very similar.
Yeah. Well, and I think part of my theory on this is that as bassists, like when we're in our traditional role in an ensemble, whether it's a jazz band or an orchestra, we're pushing out the form of a piece. Like people can tell where we are in the piece because we're the bass. We're going to tell them where that turnaround is because we're going to give them a nice clear signal, and we're going to tell them when the modulation of the keys are going to happen because they're going to hear it from the bass. Right. So we can't help but be aware of and sensitive to ideas of form and structure in music, because that's whether we've been especially studying that or not, it's what we've been doing. And so when we add a layer of electronics, it's like we're getting more, we're getting additional resources at our disposal. So like when you describe messing around and with machine or in live or any other electronics, and it's lighting up the same parts of your brain. I think that's true. I think it's true. We are just through our practice when we're in our traditional role, we're structural support.
We totally are, and I think that's why maybe a lot of bassists start experimenting with composition or even conducting, because you're thinking about just those form change. We're moving through the harmony much more clearly than say, like in an orchestral setting, like a violinist who's like just caught up in the melody and like there are bajillion notes. We're seeing those structures. We're watching the whole ensemble. We're like, we're the foundation.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's an. Sometimes we view that as a disadvantage. We're like, all those guys got the good melody, and we've got those 2 bars in key J, and that's it, or whatever. And but like it's an advantage to us too. It's part of why our instrument exists in popular forms of music. It's one of our advantages, and I think that translates across as people experiment with electronics. And I really hope that people do. Even like a straight up classical player, I think, could have some fun with it in terms of just like, this gives you a chance to like work against some other sounds, or I know people who set up just weird cool drone machines just for droning, while they're practicing their scales, So all of those kinds of things can help, I think, just explore a different aspect of the instrument.
It's like a whole new world opening up. It's like you've seen it's like that scene in The Wizard of Oz when like everything becomes color. Right. I mean, it really is interesting, and like any player at any point, it's very
just
cool.
Get a $50 delay pedal to start. Just start from there, and then see what's fun. That's really the way to go.
Well, how can people connect with you if they want to check out your playing, check it out online?
So I have a website, Gahlord Dewald, and I spell my name crazy because I got it from my grandfather. So it's GAHLORDDEWALD.com. And that's really the best way to get me. I'm on Twitter all the time at Gahlord, and I think I have a Facebook page, but I just kind of like post stuff there. I don't really hang out there because I don't have time for it. But and I'm on Instagram or whatever, but I'm around. My website's really the best place. There's all kinds of music and weird stuff there. And you can always ask me questions. So if you do find yourself going down the modular realm, get a friend, or drop me a line. I'll tell you. I'll say, get this thing to start, because you can blow a lot of money on those systems without knowing what you're doing, But mostly, start with pedals. Start with pedals and just hear the sounds. Think about how they sound and what it's doing to your bass sound and play with it. Experiment.
Gahlord, great chatting with you. Love that we ran to each other at ISB, and check out what he's up to. And he's doing so many cool things in the world of music at his website, GahlordDewald.com. And that's also linked up in the show notes. And that's going to do it for our ISB 2017 coverage. I can't believe that it's done. I wasn't expecting to record all these interviews and sessions. It was a welcome surprise, and I'm glad that I had the opportunity to bring them to you. I hope you enjoyed them. And like I said at the beginning, we've got a lot of other conversations that are going to occur as a result of that convention. Feedback at contrabassconversations.com will put you in touch with me, and I'd love to hear from you. Let me know any other guest ideas you've got. Let me know any topic ideas, anything for the show, or just a little bit about yourself. That would be great. Thanks again for following along with ISB 2017 and everything else we do here on Contrabass Conversations, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.